This is so exciting for me today. I'm sure many of you feel like this. Over the last 4 decades, Jane Campion has made so many beautifully enduring short films. She's made 8 feature films for the cinema, many works for television, including the recent long-form Top of the Lake. And through all of that work, she's really inspired and energized all of us and many colleagues in the industry as well as audiences. And if the measure of great art is the ability to make us see the world differently, and also the measure of a great artist is to expand what we think of as the possible, then Jane is absolutely this for me, and I'm sure she will be for you guys too. She's been such an intrepid explorer of female subjectivity, and she's also really been at the forefront of demonstrating that real culture change can happen in the industry. We've been so lucky to welcome her to the festival. She opened the 2003 festival with In the Cut, and in 2009, we screened Bright Star as the centerpiece gala. And tonight, her beautiful The Power of the Dog screens as our American Express gala. Put your hands together for Jane Campion. Such a pleasure to have you here. And
such a lovely, warm welcome. Thank you. Can you, is this?
Yeah, it's on. You can sit down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So I mentioned in the intro, I don't know if you could hear it, that I think lots of people in the industry have been inspired. We've got public audience, we have industry here. So many people have been inspired to join the industry by seeing your work. So many women have been energized about cinema through seeing your work. My first time seeing Jane's work was a VHS, a very much rented, battered copy of these incredible short films that you made that still stick with me as some of the best short films I've ever seen. It was so amazing that was the beginning of your career. And I wanted to ask, what was that first thing that you saw as a filmmaker that sort of electrified you and made you think, I want to do this?
Yeah. Well, I remember seeing a Boonwell film when I was probably too young to see it. It was the one with Catherine Deneuve in it.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And my mum took me, and I just remember knowing it was sort of like beyond my understanding, but feeling so excited that something, was like that, that the sexual life of adults was weird, and so intriguing and so interesting. And then later, Boonwell made me feel like, adults that can be as free and crazy as him, that's really amazing, So he was like a big passion, a first early passion of mine. And then I remember my dad, on the other hand, taking me to see Performance when I was also a teenager. And I really, really loved that. That's Nick Rogue,
absolutely.
who also is a filmmaker that I think I really love the intimacy of his work and the sort of energy of it.
Incredible.
Yeah, he's incredible. And so those were my sort of 2, and then I just remember seeing Apocalypse Now quite a bit later, but I was just like, it was so amazing to experience a film like that and to see that, the first time I understood that war was just a lot of nonsense, that, I mean, you were fed propaganda about Vietnam War, and here you were just seeing that it was just so untrue. And And I mean, so it sort of had a really eye-opening purpose to it, and the whole world that Coppola described, and I just loved it so much.
Jane, so we're going to do today a little sort of tour. It's not, it's not a sort of life in pictures, but wanted to sort of look back at some of your films as a way to move to The Power of the Dog. And I wanted to just start and remind everyone, probably my own bias, I adore these short films, and if you haven't seen them before, I'd suggest you go see them. But I wanted to start with a little clip from Peel. And the clip that we're going to see is about a family who are a mother, father, and a child who are having an argument in a car. It's very tense, a lot of unspoken tension that suggests long-term, ongoing, bubbling fight. The child has just thrown some orange peels out the window, and the father pulls up on the side of the road and forces the child to go pick up the orange peels, and that's where we start. So, unsurprisingly, the shorts are really terrific, and that won the short Palme d'Or in 1986. I wanted to ask two sort of a joint question, and one is, I know in 1986 that you ended up screening not one, but 3 other films in Cannes Film Festival, and that really started a long relationship that you've had with the festival. How did that come about? How did you end up with 4 films in the Cannes Film Festival?
Okay, so I made the 3 short films at the Australian Film and Television and Radio School while I was there, and I had that ambition because actually I went to art school first of all and started realising that, you know, despite the fact that I thought only geniuses made movies, I'd become obsessed really with film, and I started making films there, and you know, just like I used to come to festivals like this anyway, and I just like watch everything, and then I noticed they had some short films in front of the features, and I thought, oh, I could make one of those. I never thought like a feature. Like, are you kidding me? Women don't make them. That's we could make the little things beforehand maybe, but I wouldn't have presumed. So I had the ambition, you know, while I was at art school to try and make a short film, and I made a little film. It was animated about 2 single beds having a love affair. And weirdly enough, the film was lost. You know, like once we shot it, it never came back. So anyway, I made some other things at art school. But I had a year out in the world where I realised I didn't know anybody in the industry, and I really was desperate to try and, you know, see if I could be a filmmaker, but how to begin was really a difficult deed, and I made some mistakes, and you know, I tried to get a grant from the Australian Film Commission, and it really fucked that up. It's sort of my own fault, but but I sort of knew I had, and anyway, I started to realise like, oh my God, they're never going to give me any money. That's the end of my career, you know. It's like, and then I had the option of going to the film school, and I went, okay, here we go. This is my chance. And even though I thought at my age of 27 at the time, I was too old. Like, and my parents were going like, what about a job, you know? But it was amazing because at the film school, they paid you $75 a week, and it was free education. I mean, and this is actually, you probably don't know this, but this is why I'm trying to start a pop-up film school. I'm going to start a pop-up film school in New Zealand, which doesn't have a film school, just to try and recreate a situation where young people or not even that young, whoever deserves that opportunity, can spend a year creating and finding their voices as filmmakers, and that they will be paid too. And I'll work for free. They'll be paid.
That's fantastic.
And yeah, it is fantastic, and I really love it because I was given that opportunity, and I don't want everything in the world to be depleted when it comes to what's available for the next generation. Anyway, I went to the film school, and I had a year out, and I was aware this was my opportunity. If I was going to have a chance, I needed to make stuff, and I needed to make probably 3 short films because one would not be enough. And so I sort of made that my ambition, that during the time I was there to try and make 3 films. And I wasn't really sure if I was going to be good enough either. You know, like you don't know when you're beginning whether you've, you know, got the capacity or not. But, you know, you got the passion. And then you're at school with 75 other people who think they're amazing, you know.
They didn't get 3 films into the Cannes.
No, they didn't. But, you know, it's that they all felt they were there to try and find out, or, you know. So I'm thinking like, okay, well, you know, I'm sure they are. We're all great in our own lunchbox, but, you know, we have to figure it out. And I actually started quite systematically going through all the short films that were already at the film school with anything that had won any prizes, just to see if I could see what the standard was, you know, because I wasn't even really sure. And surely enough, everything that had seemed to have won something did have some quality that you would say is strengthening or strong. And I thought, okay, well, that's a sort of bar for me.
Yeah.
And then
Can you articulate what that quality was?
well, it was very different for each film. Like I saw Gillian Armstrong's short film. I can't remember the name of it now, but it was really connecting and professional, and I think it was about making buttons or something, factory work, yeah, of some young women, and it just felt that, you know, like it was quite perfect in its own way. So in the first year, you don't really get a budget to do anything, but they have a special project fund where you can apply to do it, and I applied to do it for this film, Peel. And I had these friends who were all redheadeds who were very fiery, actually, but they were brother and sister, and Tim's little boy, Ben. And I really love redheads. So.
Yeah, I was thinking that one of the reasons I wanted to show that clip is there are such interest. It's such a great short film, but there are also visual motifs that appear in lots of your films. Yeah, like just the oranges in them. And anyway, the story that came about was like a little story, and I always find this incredibly helpful, that happened to me and my family when my sister and I were in the car with my brother, and he was throwing actually tissues out the window. And we were going, stop him, you know. And my dad, who's like a really nice-natured person, but every now and again he always thinks, you know, okay, this has gone too far. This is an exercise in discipline, you know. This is too much. So we stopped the car, and he told my brother that he had to go back and pick up the tissues, which seemed like a very difficult task because they're blown all over the motorway. So anyway, it happened a little bit like that. He went back, and we were very satisfied. My sister and I was going to get told off, you know. But then when they came back from their little journey, because then my father got worried that maybe something would happen, he'd run out on the road and get a tissue. And so when they came back, it was all like they were so jolly together. And we're like, oh, no. This is not what we were hoping for. Bad. And so that was the inspiration, and as I say, I always really like to have some inspiration, whatever story I'm telling that kind of grounds it to my own experience. Like, oh, I know that feeling. I know these things that I'm trying to create. You know, it's not just in my head. It's like a body memory. So when I went to tell the story, I swapped out the tissues for orange because I thought it would, you know, have a more visual similarity to their redheadedness. And so we started off making. I mean, I learned everything you can about making films on this one short film, and I even ended up in hospital in intensive care from the stress. Working yourself too hard, yeah.
I mean, I know, and I thought, oh my God, how is someone who can't even make like a 7-minute or 9-minute film going to have a career? Like, oh my God, I hope nobody finds out. But I got asthma, and you know, I was just like working to 3 a.m. in order to sort of work out the shots, and I didn't understand about like preparation. You know, like you can start a few months before and get it done. So I really did learn how to preserve your physical strength and like stamina, like on a 9-week shoot or a 12-week shoot. You know, that's a long time to be day after day focusing and knowing, what to do every day. And that little film taught me how. Plus, like when the film got put together, everyone at the school, apart from Sally Bongers and myself, thought it was like a heap of rubbish and don't bother finishing it. It was actually, so they saw like a long, I guess it was a big lesson again, like they saw a long version of it. I know you're probably thinking, like, we're talking about one short film now, how are we going to get through the whole filmography? But this is so much like my whole filmography. And then, so you had that feeling of being a complete failure, which was kind of interesting. And also, everyone said, oh, Jane's working on that failure in that room, So it was like low expectations, and I edited it myself as well and learnt so many things, like you see those car flashes in it. I learnt that you could just go and film a whole lot of car flashes, and then you could edit any which way you like, and that the sound of the cars vroom, vroom, and vroom, vroom. It became like a kind of heartbeat of the story. And so it became very particular. And I was using a lot of my sort of art school knowledge about how to, economy of vision and trying to find a few motifs and then repeating them for strength. So in the end, I guess, even it's got my anthropology in it because I do a sort of family tree at the beginning of the film,
Yeah, the triangle.
The triangle of who they all are, in terms of their relationship to each other, which they always do in anthropology. So the film became, much stronger. And by the time I finished it, the people that told me don't bother finishing it, I showed it to them. They didn't even recognise that. But I also learnt that, it's one thing for me to see something in my short film, but you actually have to reduce it, move everything out of it that, is telling another message. And
you taught yourself that?
Actually other film students did too. Like they'd come in and I'd say, what do you think? And they'd say, well, you don't have to always cut to people that are saying the thing. You can just run it over someone's back, And I'd go, oh, thank you, I mean, I was just learning, okay? But it was really vital information from really, really clever other students. So finally that film was finished and, I made a couple of other ones and I, left the school and, I did quite well within the Sydney Film Festival. I think I won the Ruben Mamoulian award for also Girl's Own Story, which is the main prize for the shorts, although I didn't win the best fiction. Someone else won that. Anyway, whatever. Sally Potter gave it to me. So I'm very grateful to Sally. Yeah, she was on the international jury. And then maybe like a year went by and I made another film, which was the fourth one, called Two Friends at the ABC for Jan Chapman, which was like a 75-minute film. So I got a bit of stamina by then. And then one morning I got a call from this very excited French guy. And out of the blue, at like 7 a.m., and he said, I'm very sorry to ring you so early in the morning, but I'm ringing now because I don't know if you know who I am. I am Pierre Rizion, and I am scout for the Cannes Film Festival, and I have discovered deep in front of Francis Ford Coppola in Apocalypse Now. And I was going, oh, Apocalypse Now. Okay. He said, I just want your permission to take the films and to maybe we make a selection of them. For the festival, may I have your permission? And I said, yeah, that'd be great. I mean, it was out of the blue, okay? I didn't even know he was looking at them. And apparently he went as a scout to look at films in Australia. And when he went there, he didn't like any of the short films that they were screening. No, it's not the short films, the long films, the feature lengths. And he had a lot more time there. And he said, well, what else can you show me? Is there anybody interesting that's coming up or something like that? And they had copies of a few people's work, including mine, and he looked at one of them and he said, interesting, good, anything else? And they showed him another and he said, also interesting, okay, And then the third, and he said, okay, let's call her. And what happened was that they couldn't decide which of the shorts they'd take, so they decided to make a program of them for On Certain Regard altogether. But I probably don't want to tell you this, but the screening was actually terrible. Like this is the world of film, something goes right and many things go wrong.
They can't tell.
They have absolutely, their standard of screening is absolutely famous in the world, like being amazing. However, when they had 4 films that they had to do and like the subtitling on the films was done in a rush, so on the Two Friends one, it had bled through to all of the other. It was like in the reel, and you couldn't really read it. And then one of the... It was so terrible. Like the one film broke down twice. The sound wasn't there, and it was like... And like so many people left the screening.
But then you won the prize.
I did, but I just want to go on about the bad bit first. What happened was like seemed to be nobody left. I was like, this is the worst day of my whole life. I'd ever come to Cannes, let me out of here. And it was like really terrible. And I left the cinema and Pierre came up to me and it's a great success. And I went, but they all left. And he said, no, the ones who remain are the important ones. They're from Le Monde and Liberation, and all these newspapers, and they love it. And so, you know, and they did. So, but, you know, like my experience of it was so hideous. But the overall, I mean, what's left of it was that the films were discovered in Cannes, and I won the Palme d'Or for Best Short Film.
Well, so yeah, that's and it is a long relationship with Cannes, including your first feature, Sweetie, which screened in Cannes. But the first couple of features, I think, also like we start to see visual motifs and themes that are in your work. The first couple of films also really sort of define the subject space, I think, in such an interesting way. They're about women who are outsiders, who have difficult relationships with convention, like they don't behave the way they're expected to behave.
Fortunately, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But were you really aware, like, these women don't exist in cinema, and I really want to tell their stories?
Well, I think I didn't really think of it like that. I just thought, like, I'm always attracted to, you know, bad girls of and literature as well. You know, like if you think of Emily Bronte was unsociable, incredibly unsociable. She wouldn't go out, and yet here she is writing, I think, one of the sexiest men. I mean, she's undoubtedly a virgin. She only had the experience of her crazy brother Bramwell, and yet she wrote, I think, or created from her imagination, one of the sexiest heroes of all time in Heathcliff, and you know, proper young woman, just stunning everybody, including her family, who were sort of shocked that she could write such a crude or rude or rough or raw story. But you know, we've got Emily Dickinson, who was a social outcast, really, who lived and worked in her room and lived a life of literature. And for me, a lot of these women shunned the world for a good reason. The world was not welcoming to them. And I think that they created their own, through their imagination, a preferable world.
Yeah. And it sounds like maybe literature was providing sort of examples of the types of women and female stories that you were more interested in than cinema was at the time. Is that fair to say?
I think, yes, I'm always been a lover of the novel. And, you know, even then, for women to get their works read, they often used a male pseudonym, as in George Eliot as well. And even Eleanor Ferrante today, she doesn't use a male pseudonym, but she uses a pseudonym. And, you know, because she's writing about female rage at a time when I think if she was, you know, doing interviews and all the rest of it, people would really attack her. Yeah. And I think it's so smart of her not to do that, and to... or whatever choice she's made. I don't know if people here are familiar with My Brilliant Friend and her work, but you know, for me, like, it's so exciting to see a woman's voice come out that actually not only introduces to the world but to women, you know, that they're allowed to be rageful, or to be angry, or to be, you know, to have ambivalent feelings towards their best friend. You know, from jealousy to envy, anger, love, adoring, you know. And because I think even that, you know, like, for a long time, you know, the patriarch has ruled so much stuff that, and they have a very particular vision of how they want to see women, which is either the you know, like the mother type that does everything for everyone and everywhere, or the no little cute innocent. And you know, this is not a prescription for a life.
You see it
women,
more in
you know?
sibling relationships, maybe that sort of darkness and that tension, but not to other women.
Yes, I mean, you know, there have been, you know, people like Lena Wertmüller, writing and making films that I saw too that were really like Seven Beauties, which is fantastic. She's got all those great crazy sisters.
You gave an award to her,
I did, yeah. And I mean, I love that movie, but I did feel like the understanding of who really women are in the world through cinema, you know, is kind of curated through men. it's not to say that there aren't some really sensitive, great men, but they, you know, maybe there are a lot of sensitive, great women too. And I wanted to tell female stories.
Yeah. And those first two stories are, I know there were some people who were saying, oh, it's dirty, or like particularly with Sweetie.
I mean, I know, like,
And also
they were offended. A lot of the guy interviewers were incredibly offended that she's, they say, well, oh, your film was so disgusting, it's horrible. And I went, why? And she said, well, Sweetie was dirty.
Because
she was, well, whatever.
Yeah.
That really, she had dirty underwear, oh dear, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And also I think that the sanitary towel scene in Angel at My Table, aside from Carrie, might be the first place I'd ever seen sort of menstrual blood, even, you know, physically shown in cinema. I mean, that just didn't exist, that sort of real truthfulness and for some people confrontational female physicality.
I know, I remember when we were trying to get that funded, even women like working at the ABC said, oh, no one's going to want to watch something about a fuzzy redheaded person with a period.
Thank goodness you didn't listen to all these people. So
I don't know how come we didn't. Maybe it was the art school.
Yeah.
You know, that sort of brain thinking, which is a little bit more rebellious. Like, I remember, you know, when I went to film school, the teachers there were really lame. And I mean, they genuinely were like, and they never went to the movies. They didn't know what was going on. And I mean, I was really aware of that, and that, to listen to what they were saying was like rubbish, you know. And so I didn't care what they thought at all. And yeah, so that gave me that strength, you know, because I think, you know, from art school background, that sort of, we're more critical thinking, you know.
Yeah. And you, with those films, and you've continued at times, you write alone when you're writing, but you also wrote those first two films with co-writers. What's the difference for you when you are collaborating on a script with somebody else and when you're
much
doing
more
it
fun? I think collaborating is, sometimes I feel like I have to do a film by myself because it's so particular to me, you know, like maybe the piano, or, I mean, I don't know, to adapt one with someone else make much sense because you're almost collaborating with the writer, the original author anyway. So I think, but if it's a very, like, Bright Star was a very personal story. I mean, I used Andrew Motion's biography, but it wasn't really the story of the film, but it was just, you know, like the backbone of it, the information, the research. But I do really love to collaborate, and I love collaborating with Gerard Lee, who I did Passionless Moments with.
And Top of the Lake.
And Top of the Lake, yeah, and Sweetie, actually. Yeah. So, because he's just so funny, and, you know, a lot of the reason for making film is it's like really good fun to be working with amazing people and, you know, supported to do your best together. Yeah, it's extraordinary to work with great collaborators.
When you're in the writing process, do you, whether either alone or with someone else, do you have to...
Especially good if you're the boss.
Yeah.
You say the collaboration.
Do you have to get to a point with your scripts? How do you know when you're like ready to turn them in, start shooting and start pre-production?
Well, it's a really good question. How do you know if your film's ready, your script's ready? How do you know your film's ready? It's sort of like you get to a point when you can't think of anything else to do, and then you start getting your collaborators on the project. Like it was with me, Tanya Sagetchian, and Tanya was like amazing help and support, and even structuring, you know, like the current project, Power of the Dog, doing that adaptation, and then you share it with them and her, and also the Seesaw team, who also, you know, my producing friends, done Top of the Lake, and I've been working with for about 8 or 10 years now. And they tell you haven't finished, that there's a few things left to do, and that it doesn't read as well as you think, and then you try and do that work. You try and take that on, and it's always irritating. But when you if you hear it and it rings a bell, I think you have to do it. You have to try and fix it. And then, sometimes it gets undone. But I do think if you basically need to, the script is usually used to finance the film. So it has to be readable in a way that people who are financing it are going to have faith in it and trust in it. And even if you juggle it around later, and also even, this is a little bit of a secret, but, if you want a good actor to play in your film, you can pump up their role a bit.
then strip it back.
Yeah. Maybe if they do really well with it, but, it is a thing to think about that, you've got to attract the actors to the work, yeah.
You mentioned Tanya, and I'm going to pick on her as well, because she said something I think that so gets to the heart of one of the things that I think a lot of us probably love about your work, which is that you make the invisible visible. And I wanted to show a clip, but then sort of ask you about that idea of like making emotions visible and how you do that. And it's sort of, I feel like Led Zeppelin couldn't play a concert without showing, doing Stairway to Heaven. So I want to enjoy that beautiful moment in the piano, which is, I'm sure you've seen so many times, but it's just so gorgeous, and it really does show that invisible interior life so well. Could we see the clip from the piano, please?
Just so stunning, and there's 6 words or 7 words there, but it just says so much. How does and I think the Power of the Dog has so many of those moments as well. How does a sequence like that, how is it born in your mind? Is it in the script? Is it in the edit? It's a little of everything.
Yeah, well, I think it happens to me when I'm considering how I'm going to direct it, but it also is born out of the fact that Holly doesn't talk. Ada doesn't speak. Like, once I got to the point of thinking, okay, thinking about the scenes in more detail, like normally when you have scenes, you've got someone says something, the other one says something, and you've got intercutting going on. But here, I suddenly went, oh, shit. Oh, my God, this is going to be really difficult. How am I going to organise this? So it was like, in this scene, perhaps it's a little bit easier, but Holly with her eyes and, Anna there, they just put pressure on him, Like, they'd come to ask him to take him back to the piano, and they just put that pressure on him. So, I learned, I guess, through the rehearsal, a lot about what Holly and Anna could do together. And I also learned, when I was thinking about that problem, I remember I saw these 2 girls walking down the street, which was really a big hint, like I was talking about, like having something embodied before. And they were like 2 horses or 2 ponies, and they just had this beautiful brown bouncing hair, and one was a lot shorter than the other. So it looked a bit like Ada and Flora. And I went, oh, that's it. They're kind of like little twins, like a little, big me and mini me, and they're just going to do everything kind of together, like a harmony in a way. And so that was a sort of like a really important insight for me about how I would film them, how I would work with them together, and how that would be a really powerful motif, and that the motif would play into how together they were, and then when they were separated with the love affair first of all, the earning the piano back, not so much a love affair, but a exploration of Baines trying to work out what he wanted, and, I guess some sex, something. And, of course, the little girl had to be separated, so that, to have them very close and seen together all the time and then split really, I think helped that story element develop, where, the little girl who meant so much to her, who was her voice, who was everything, lost her importance, lost her place, and was, angry with her mother and wanted her to pay for it, but not as badly as Stuart made her pay for it. And seeing that now, like even 20 or so or 30 years later, you still really feel like, oh my God, you know, especially now with the Taliban and everything else, like this control of woman thing is so painful, I think. Yeah.
And
it seems relevant even now, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's another clip I want to show in just a minute, but I just wanted to ask you, that's really related to that, but I just wanted to ask you about, it sounds like at the beginning when you said you were studying other people's short films and figuring out how they did it, that you're also like a real student of film as well.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, Francis Ford Coppola taught me filmmaking. He doesn't know it, but I just like studied his films and pulled them apart and looked at his early work, including Rain People and things like that, and sort of watched how he built his classical style of working with actors, because in my opinion his work with actors is still amongst the best in the world that's ever been, and because it's so relaxed and so embedded, and he works with incredible actors and they are so casual but so true and real, and So I tried to find out what he did and how he did it. I mean, he chose amazing people as well, but, there was a work and expectations he had or what he was looking for that I wanted to understand more about.
And when you made Bright Star and you were interviewed about, making a film about a poet, you said you were trying to photograph sensations, which I also thought was sort of related to this as well too.
Yeah, I don't know why I said that.
It's very beautiful, and I think describes the work. Could we actually watch? I want to watch the pre-title sequence of Portrait of a Lady, because I think it does do this so beautifully, and it feels like visual poetry very much to me. So could we see that, please?
Oh, the female girl portraits, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Another redhead. I love that so much, and it is what you were talking about that, seeing the two girls walking along the street and the way they move together, and also Holly and Anna together as well, and in that sort of space that women create together. That's something I think you do really well in many of your films. Yeah. And I just wanted to ask about this in particular. When did a sequence like that come up? I mean, did you already know that you wanted to do that from the very, very start, as you were writing the script, or is that later when you wanted to punctuate?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think I had it at the beginning. I did that in the post section as a title sequence. I think I was trying to balance the idea of portraiture of, which I think Portrait of a Lady is about. It's actually a portrait of a young woman, and it's one of my favourite books. And of Isabel Archer, and he tells the story really of the loss of her innocence, and very painfully and well. That sequence also, it's a very English story. It's a very European story, I guess, but American story.
Yeah, an American story, of course. But it also, this pre-credit sequence connects to your own sort of film heritage as well too. Was it really important to you? Do you feel part of an Antipodean film heritage, and was that part of creating it? And the fact that it was New Zealand, girls from New Zealand, right?
These girls?
Yes.
Yes. I feel like they could have been from anywhere, but for me, as I saw it, like girls from New Zealand and Australia, of course the story is about Isabel Archer coming from America, which at that time was the sort of liberated other colony, or not a colony, but country. And she was like came like this amazingly fresh creature who wanted a career, who wanted to be important, who wanted to be invigorated by the world, not just to be a wife. in her mind, that she wanted to understand things and that she wasn't going to settle for that. Just being a marriageable person. And I think coming from Australia and New Zealand, like, we had become the equivalent really of what the American was then, so that the Australian and New Zealand young women were, like I said, intrepid travellers. And America was now, I think, more establishment in a way. So I was just trying to remember, what are those shoes that we all used to wear, those great big shoes? There's, huh? Yes, thank you. Doc Martens. And I was just trying to get a feeling for who is Isabel Archer today, if she was existing. And I was thinking, of course, she's a Doc Marten wearing, Australian, New Zealand or whatever, going out into the into the world, presenting herself as like, androgynous, really. Yeah.
And do you, just going back to the question of, do you feel connected? Do you feel like there's a sort of Antipodean tradition that you're part of and feel really connected? You went back for Top of the Lake, obviously, to make that.
I mean, you of course you become a part of that tradition just by doing it, but I don't feel like, no, I didn't really feel like, oh, I'm part of the tradition, but I do feel like an excitement about making, say, Top of the Lake, because it was made in the area where I've become, like, fall in love with in New Zealand, which is at the top of the lake, near the Rootburn Walk and near Queenstown, and a really remote part of New Zealand, which I personally really love, and like a town, where everybody sort of is kind of bloody minded and has their own way of doing things, and nobody can agree about anything. Like, sometimes they try and have these, like, let's imagine how our town can, build, or whatever, like discussions in Glenorchy, where I'm from, and like, nobody can decide or agree about anything, so they just, like, dissolve and go away. So, but I do really love that that landscape, that wilderness, and that's where that story was invented. And so I have a loyalty to a space or a place, and like in Holy Smoke, and like the desert in Australia, or Sweetie was just like our life there, Jared and mine, and it was sort of based a little bit on the Sweetie character was based on my sister, as I think my sister was worried people would think.
It's dedicated to your sister, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. She helped me a lot at the time, because I had a really terrible thing happen during the making of it. My mum tried to kill herself, and she stepped in and came back from England and looked after her, and so that I didn't have to stop filming. It was towards the end of the film, but my poor mum has a big history of depression, and it's, mental health illness is real.
Can I ask, you talked a little about Coppola and how he works with actors. You also have such a gift with your actors, and in particular, I think taking actors who we expect one thing of and then doing something very different with them. I mean, Nicole Kidman is she'd done To Die For, probably filming at the same time as you were filming this, but it does seem, and with Benedict in your new film, you cast people who we expect something of and then find something sometimes quite dark and complex. How much are you interested in the sort of star persona that exists and the tension that you can create there?
Well, I love working with actors. My mum was an actress and my dad was a theatre director, and I used to love acting as well as a kid. But, with Nicole, like, I remember meeting her when she was 14, and, she was genuinely talented, always has been, always will be. She's intelligent and kind of an amazing kid when she was young, of course, has continued to be extraordinary. But she reached out to me saying, oh, can we talk? And I really want to do something with you. I feel like I'm going to give up acting altogether if I keep doing these handbag roles in America, because I think she felt that being the wife of Tom Cruise, nobody knew that actually she had a capacity or a talent of her own. And I mean, I was aware of it but I did feel like she needed to do more deep work with like an acting coach or something, and I suggested she do that. And she did work with an amazing acting coach that Harvey had introduced me to. And that was the work she did for, what was that one?
To Die For.
To Die For, yeah. And then I think, she came onto my project also working with that same coach. And since then she's always used those, like I think actors that sort of continually keep working, exploring their art, like are the ones that are lasting and are really brilliant, unless they've just got some kind of weird talent where they, like I guess Harrison Ford or something. It's just like Harrison Ford,
Harrison
and,
Ford, yeah, exactly.
It's so amazing. We'll want more of it, but yeah. So I mean, but I think that the hard thing for that film was that people didn't want Nicole, to do that role. They didn't know that she really has the depth she has, and they weren't ready to accept that at that point. Like they had I guess already listening to the idea that she was, Tom Cruise's girlfriend, wife, whatever, and not up to the role of a classical character, playing Isabel Archer, which obviously I don't agree with.
And so I agree, and I think
it's like they put her down without even looking at the performance. Yeah,
and that's even that opening.
Yeah, no, she's
so
really
beautiful.
good. Yeah.
And so when you are working with an actor and you are going sometimes quite dark and complex places with them, how seems like you have a real relationship of trust with your actors. And
every director wants to look for that, and to create that environment on the set and, with the actor, so that, because what you want, where actors need to go is to places they don't really know. It's like you are entering a mystery in a way. And I think there's a woman who I really love the way she talks about it. Anyway, it's Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who's wrote the book Women That Run With Wolves. I don't know how many of you know about her, but she talks about this sort of stuff so beautifully. She talks about, the energy of creativity that's actually maybe sexually born originally, out of lust, but it's also that same lust energy can be used creatively, and that you can enter kind of these deeper rivers of which are basically creativity, and that it's sort of like invisible but visible once you get to understand it. I mean, most authors or writers or anybody working continually in the creative field have developed that connection that is beyond the brain, that, if you set yourself up for it, it just starts to fulfill you and be there for you. And so I'm always looking for ways for the actors to connect to that pool, that energy that's always there for them, and that, is going to be better than anything they could think up with their brain. So that's what I really do believe, that it's, it's part instinct, but it's also an even more interesting sort of psychic energy that can be created. And yes, I mean, many actors already know about that stuff, or are already intuitively working with it, but like, say, for Benedict and myself on the Power of the Dog, that was a big step for us. Like, we really believed that, for both of us, that we wanted to take a psyche journey towards our characters and the project, because it's a complex piece. And we knew if we didn't do that, we wouldn't be fulfilling the brief, really. And, so what I love in actors is their courage, and Benedict's a very courageous and fearless actor. He will go there. I mean, a lot of people are really frightened of, like, trying something that they haven't tried before. It might put them off their pace or something like that. But, my job in a way is just reaching out to them to say, like, try it, I've tried it, I think it's good, I think if you work with this person, you'll get an interesting result, so give it a go. And, like, to actually take them beyond their comfort zone, to maybe into new work or new areas. But you can't do this with everybody, people have to be willing.
Yeah.
So, you have to sort of, like, working with someone like Benedict, it's like he's such an extraordinary talent anyway. He's got this capacity to, he's got so much charisma and energy and kind of, masculine stuff that we saw, I guess, with Sherlock Holmes and things like that. But also he's got this, which you don't see so much in that, this absolute capacity to go deep inside and just open out and be really emotionally vulnerable.
I think I'm going to give the projectionist a chance to get to the next clip because I'd like to show the teaser that we have for The Power of the Dog. But while they're queuing that up, I wanted to show something from In the Cut because I think it's such an interesting film and it was so, I feel, really ahead of its time and it's being reappraised right now and rediscovered. And I wondered whether, just talking about actors still, whether you thought part of that reaction to it was people weren't ready to see Meg Ryan in that role. It's quite dark, or even ready to see sort of female sexuality in the way that
you have to remember that almost all the, like I would say 95% or maybe 90% of all the writers about film are men, right? Wouldn't you say? And I really felt that at the time that that secret knowledge about women that I think In the Cut introduces was something very confronting for them, and they really screamed about it, didn't they? At the time, which wasn't much fun because they really fucked it up.
Well, so many women are rediscovering it now, and you have a Criterion release of the film, a re-release?
I don't think of In the Cut, but is it? I don't know.
I thought I read that, but I could be wrong.
It's the piano we're doing there, but yes, we have had a screening in London. Actually, there was some young people put on a screening.
In fact, one of our programmers now was the person who put that on.
Yeah, and it was really fun, and it was really full cinema, and we talked about the film and together, and I think Dion Beebe even turned up there who shot it. So that was really fun, and it is really, it does something to heal the pain of the original release.
Well, and of course, Sandra Hepburn opened the London Film Festival in 2003.
And then there was the Parkinson interview.
I didn't read that, but let's not go there. That's exactly what you're talking about, male film critics.
Yeah.
But should we see the gorgeous teaser trailer, please, from The Power of the Dog?
Yeah, this is not really showing his sensitive side, but dominance, yeah. Well, I think it's, the same kind of advice I gave myself, which is, try and discover what you love and what's good and why you love it, and then you try and do it yourself is the way to do it, and not to put things out until they're right. To keep going back and to fixing it and to be kind of, it's painful, but it's the learning experience of and I think some of that exploration of till you can find out how to do it really well is what the learning is about, and will certainly be happening at my pop-up.
Amazing.
Which is really just about I learned that your friends can tell you just say be brutal, tell me what you like, what you don't like, and you have to try and build muscles to hear that feedback, because feedback is brutal. It's like every time you hear it you go like, oh, I'm never going to be good enough, but you can have that attitude of it's help. Feedback is help, but you can only take so much at a time. So you've got to pace yourself.
Trust your collaborators, obviously, as well too.
Well, very few people tell you the truth. That's one of the big problems. Because they just can't be bothered with what's going to happen if they really tell you the truth, because you're going to look at cry and be upset, and yet perhaps your collaborators will, because they are going to they're going to go down too if if it's not well done, so it's that really difficult thing. You need the truth, but it's like you need inspiration to do really well, and you need to learn, and there's a little bit of fear and pain involved in that, but you've got to have the people that love you and support you, and a little bit like seeing you into a future that you're not quite there yet with, like Tanya always does. You know, like having someone that love is so important to this process, yet you still have to have the determination to do better, to fix it. You know, and it's quite it's a really weird and kind of like sour quality to the whole process. But it's sweet and sour, I guess, is the thing. It's so important to accept that sourness. And I think, you know, have it as part of the process. It's just it. You know, I don't know many filmmakers that get carried away by themselves because they just know how many times they've failed, you know, in whatever project they're doing. They fixed it. And you know, so, you know, I've learned to be, a great failure.
Well,
in a way.
I think it's incredibly generous and really, really lucky that you're going to be working with young filmmakers, because that's
Probably not that young.
So important. Well, other filmmakers.
Yeah.
It's such a collaborative process. But I just want to thank you so much for allowing
Thanks,
us to
Trish.
screen The Power of the Dog as our.
I'm so excited to be
tonight.
screening it. Yeah, that's so.
Amazing.
And people, what's the capacity of the cinemas now?
It's big. It's 2,000 seats. So
Oh wow! And they're
lots of-
all.
Hopefully, how many people are seeing it tonight?
Yay!
So we'll keep the party going. And thank you so much, Jane Campion, for being with us.